expert care from people who care.
Hi everyone! Today we are here at the Outreach Teen and Family Services office with Kate, Grace, and a special guest, Kelly. Kelly is a native Pittsburgher. She earned both her bachelor's and master's degrees from the University of Pittsburgh and worked in research at Pitt and then at Hartford Hospital until she left her career to be a stay-at-home mom. Kelly has a passion for mental health education and believes that we have the power to reduce the stigma that surrounds mental health. She lives in Mount Lebanon with her husband, 3 children, and their dog, Buddy. We are so excited to have you on Teens Tap In today, Kelly.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. It's so nice to meet you guys.
Before we dive into the show content, I'd like to start off with a brief description of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, which we will be discussing today. According to Simply Psychology, intrinsic motivation describes the undertaking of an activity for its inherent satisfaction, while extrinsic motivation describes behavior driven by external rewards or punishments. Rather, it is abstract or concrete. Okay, so we're going to start off with some fast 5 questions as well. So these are just really simple, like, would you rather or this or that questions, just to get the conversation started.
Okay.
So the first one is, would you rather travel to a new place or return to the same place annually?
New place, 100%.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Grace?
I kind of like going to the same place annually. I think I'm kind of biased because my family does that. But it's nice, like it's very relaxing and you know like exactly what you're getting into. So I think you can really, like it's truly relaxing.
Yeah.
But it's also a lot of fun to explore somewhere new.
Yeah.
I agree. I think both ways. I think the most my family will do is go back to the same place like twice. But normally my parents don't like to like go back every year to the same place.
Pros and cons to everything, I
Yeah.
think, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with the relaxing part, though. It does make it, like, easier because you know, like, where everything is and everything. Okay, second question is, would you rather travel on horseback or by motorcycle?
Horseback. I had a horrible motorcycle accident when I was a kid, so I'm terrified of those. So horses, absolutely.
I love horses.
Yeah.
I think it would be so fun to travel on horseback. Don't know if it'd be the most convenient, but...
I know. I rode on a horse before and it was so fun. So I would definitely do that again. I'm also terrified of motorcycles.
Yeah.
They're also too loud. Like, I feel like I don't need that much
Scary.
attention when I feel like and then you have to, like, wear a helmet, and then I don't think
You have to wear a helmet when you're horseback riding, too.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that. But I feel like I would need to, like, wear leather jackets to really fit the part of the motorcycle. Okay, third question is, would you rather have a magic bag from which you could pull out anything you wanted, kind of like Mary Poppins, or a magic door that would lead you to anywhere you want? But, I mean, the door would probably stay in place. So, like, a door in your house where if you stepped into it, you could go anywhere.
I'd go the magic door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why the door?
I think it's the same reason that I would say I would go to a different place each year, because I have had experiences, because I'm the age that I am, of going the same place each year. And then when I have gone somewhere different, I think, oh my gosh, this world is so big and there's so many places to see and so much culture to explore. So I think that would be the same reason I would want the magic door.
Yeah.
Because if I can go through there and go anywhere I want, then I think that's just, I don't know. I'm someone that likes to continue to learn.
Yes.
So
yeah.
I think that's really the best way to do it.
I feel like I would have to go with the bag just because I feel like I always forget things, or I'm somewhere and I just like wish I had some specific thing. And then my thought process is like, I'll travel with my bag. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'll go all the places, but just take the bag with me.
I'm the same as you, Kate. I'm going for the bag. I feel like it would be so nice to just like pull anything out. If I could really pull anything out, I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna pull out a plane ticket to wherever I want to go.
Or I'm gonna pull out a wad of like cash.
I know. Wow.
Okay, I didn't think about the cash. I think I'm gonna go back now.
Wait, I just realized that as I was saying that. I wonder if there's like restrictions.
That's fair though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, okay. So that's interesting. If there were restrictions, then I would rethink it. But if there's no restrictions, I might go back to the bag.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's revisit this at the end of the session.
Yes.
Okay. I might change my mind.
The fourth question is, would you rather eat Chipotle or Chick-fil-A?
Oh,
It's a hard question.
It's not for me because I don't eat either of those.
Oh, really?
I don't. My children do, but okay. So hypothetically, if I ate both of those, I think I would go Chick-fil-A.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, because I don't eat either of them, but I think that's just the way I would go.
I think I would have to go Chipotle just because I feel like I can at least somewhat tell myself that Chipotle is healthy.
Yeah.
You know, like, not that Chick-fil-A doesn't have healthy options, because they do, but I think normally when we think of Chick-fil-A, we think of, like, the nuggets and the fries and the Chick-fil-A sauce, whereas Chipotle, at least they put in some lettuce and some chicken, and I can tell myself that I'm eating healthy, so...
That's a good point, Kate.
Yeah.
I feel like I would go for Chipotle just because there's, like, more options. Like, Chick-fil-A, I feel like it's very, like, you have one protein, like, you are getting chicken or you're getting nothing.
They have the new honey chicken, though. Did you hear about that?
Well, it's still chicken.
I know, but I want to try it. I want to try it.
The chicken is the chicken. Don't they have, like, mac and cheese and stuff at Chick-fil-A?
They do.
Yes, they do.
I don't really like their mac and cheese that
No.
much. That's my take.
I don't know if I've ever tried
I
their
don't
mac
love
and
it. I
cheese.
think there's better mac and cheeses out there.
Yeah, I have no experience of that. I just know the smell when I get it in my car when I'm picking it up for the kids.
The
but
waffle fries.
Yeah.
They're really good there.
I've not had those.
Okay, last question is, would you rather live 10 minutes away from a mediocre job or commute 2 hours every day to your dream job?
Oh.
I guess money could be a factor in this, I assume. So
I would probably do the 2 hours to the dream job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm someone that likes driving in my car too, so I don't mind that.
Yeah.
That might get old 2 hours each way. But is it an hour each way or 2 hours each way? That's a
good
I don't know.
if it's an hour each way.
Probably 2 hours each way, I think.
Oh, that's hard, but I think I'd still do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, like, I know a lot of people, like, who live on, like, my friend, his dad lives on Long Island, and he takes the train into the city.
Okay.
So it's, like, an hour train, and, I mean, you can do work on it. So,
Yeah.
like, I guess you could think about it as doing less work at home and more work on the commute.
Yeah.
I feel like I would go for the commute. Like, I would so
Yeah.
much rather be in a job that, like, I love than, like, being closer to a job that's, like, okay.
Yeah. And I feel like that long-term satisfaction that you would have from having your dream job is worth the 2 hours.
I
guess
agree.
4 hours. We would like to take a moment to express our gratitude to St. Clair Health. They've been our steadfast annual sponsor, supporting our podcast for over 4 consecutive years now.
At St. Clair Health, we're always improving, building on our commitment to face the challenges of today, making an impact on the communities we serve, so we can be stronger together. St. Clair Health, expert care from people who care.
Okay, so diving into the show content and getting into intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, my first question for you, Kelly, is, as a mother, how do you define intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation in your own parenting?
Okay, so this is an interesting question. I think most of your questions had me going down several paths.
Yeah.
I think there's obvious need for both of them. I think at times one or the other is appropriate, but I do think, especially now having children that are older, I think the value of intrinsic motivation is, in my eyes, more important than the extrinsic, because I think anything that you're trying to get your children to do, it's more sustainable if it's something that's coming from within them. And when you have to rely on external validation or motivation, then that sort of takes the drive from the child, and it's like you're either, like you said earlier, trying to avoid a punishment or trying to gain some type of reward. Mm-hmm. And I think for it's important to realize that when you're a parent and you have young children, and it is your job to validate your children and to motivate your children at times, but when they get out into the world's not waiting for them to keep motivating them. That has to come from within.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the extrinsic motivation can be used as like a supplement to intrinsic motivation.
Yes.
But like you said, once you leave like the house and you turn 18, you go to college or do whatever, and like you're on your own, there's not going to be a person like on your back 24/7 being like, oh, if you do this, like you get X reward, or like you avoid Y punishment, you know? So I think it's really important to focus and prioritize intrinsic.
And I think on top of that, just in terms of extrinsic motivation when they're little, or even in middle and high school, you don't want to negate the fact that if your child is working really hard and gets an A in a class that they thought, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of myself. The grade being an extrinsic motivator, that's important because the child has put in a lot of work. But I think you're right. Like, I think that's an additional, like a bonus on top of, because obviously the child has to be internally motivated to want to do the work to get the grade in the first place. But I don't want to negate the importance of that grade or whatever celebration there is of that accomplishment, because I think that's important too.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that there's a difference between like you said, the child working hard in the class because they wanted to get an A and getting an A, then, for example, there being like an expectation or a punishment, being like, oh, if you don't get an A, then this will happen.
And that's important now, because I think I have come into contact with parents that if there's even an idea that that your child is capable of straight A's, and to say, you know what, you're not getting straight A's, so we're taking away A, B, or C because we know that you're capable of more. And my husband and I chose when we first had children that wasn't the kind of parenting we were going to do. We tell our kids, we expect you to do your best. And if you come home with a grade that is not, I ask my kids, is that the best you could do? And most times they say yeah, and I'm fine with that. And if it's not the best they can do, they know that. And they know what adjustments to make to move on. And I think that's important. I'm now realizing maybe I did a couple of things right. This is really exciting for me.
I'm sure you did more than a couple.
We'll see. The jury's out.
From my perspective, I definitely agree, because as someone who's about to be going to college, it's like there is no reward for anything that I do. Like, my parents aren't going to be like right there seeing every single thing that I do. So it's like very much like I'm going to be doing everything for myself. And I'm glad that I already have that intrinsic motivation to like do things because I want to do them, and not do things because my parents want me to do them.
Right.
Yeah. I think that ties really well into my next question, which is, why do you think it is important for children to develop intrinsic motivation? I do think we touched on most of this already, but if there was anything you had to add to that.
We did. So I think that the most important point that I would make about that is that I think internal motivation is sustainable. Because I think once you get out into the world outside, everybody else's reactions and opinions of you is very much outside of your control. And so the only thing that's stable at that point is what's coming from inside. And I think that also, I think it's important because I think it drives sort of becoming your authentic self. Because if you're worried about external things all the time, then you're not being true to who you are. And I think if the motivation comes from within, then you're well aware of what aligns with you as a person and able to move through it in that way, instead of expecting everybody outside of you to validate what you're doing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, my third question is, how do you, or did you, encourage your child or children to develop internal motivation rather than relying on rewards or external validation?
Okay, this is a good question, Kate. I think, and I will say, I think I did this well when they were smaller, but I think it's important if there are parents who have small children, to hear this. Like, I think when my kids come home and say something that they did that they believe was good, whether it be at school or in a sport or whatever, to really emphasize, like, how, instead of making it about like a prize or candy or whatever, cake, or let's go out to dinner to celebrate, really focusing on how did that make you feel? Like they come in the door and they're so excited, and like, I guess really emphasizing, like, how did that make you feel?
Yeah.
Because they're so proud of themselves. And I think focusing on that instead of focusing on maybe some reward that's coming their way. And those things, like I said before, can still come. But I think it's important for them to realize, like, yeah, I feel really good about myself. And every time that I have some kind of success, if this is the feeling that I get, then I'll do this again and again and again. And I think that's why it's important to keep I don't know, revalidating that whole
Yeah.
process.
I really, really like that. I've never really thought about it like that, but I think a lot of times it's like a kid brings home a good grade and instinct, which coming like from a good place of a parent, it's always coming from a good place, like is like, oh, like let's go out to dinner, like you said, or like what's like a game or toy that you want, like I'll buy it for you.
Yes.
But then like maybe once or twice, if it's like a huge accomplishment, like I think is good, but every single time eventually in the long run can lead to like a decrease in intrinsic motivation, because the idea is like, oh, I want to do good because I want to get like another toy or another game,
Right.
and not because I love the feeling of doing good and how it makes me feel proud of myself.
Right. And I think and I will say, like, I probably am guilty of doing the other thing as the kids were growing up, and I have the benefit of hindsight now. So I handle things differently with my third child than I did with my first. So it's all like you learn and grow as a parent too. You don't get a book when you have a child. So I'm learning all of these things too. And I think also, to add to that, I think when there's something that happens that is a if you use the word failure, but something that doesn't go well, to ask the question, what did you learn?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, being upset or having the child think that there's something really wrong, that they had a failure. It's more about, well, what did you learn from that? What will you do differently next time? And that's something that I've been much better at the last couple of years than I ever was before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I also think, now thinking back to my own childhood, I think there were definitely instances, I don't know if I can pinpoint it, where like my parents would like quote unquote reward me for like failing.
Yeah.
And not necessarily like, oh, you like got a B on a test, like I'm gonna go buy you a cake, but kind of that idea of like showing me that like it was okay to not be perfect, and like still showing that they were proud of me even when I didn't succeed. So I think that like nuance of like rewards, like I think they can be good in moderation and used in like both circumstances depending on the situation.
I agree. That's a great point, because I think so. I think it's so hard now for kids because there's a lot of pressure to be, to get perfect grades or to be a certain way, and I think that's a really important thing to show your kids. Like, none of us are perfect, and all of us make mistakes, and I would even say that you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes anyway. So that's a really good point. I think it's important. My oldest daughter, and she would say this if she were here, super hard on herself, like really driven. And I remember just didn't want to be late, wouldn't want to be late to class. And we would actually encourage her, be late for class, like get detention. Like you're going to see that you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And she just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think so, to your point, to be able to like normalize getting a grade that's not like the top grade, to say like, it's okay. You're going to get up tomorrow morning. The sun's going to rise. Like your feet are going to hit the floor. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
I feel like sometimes like the fear of what a child thinks is like failing can be worse than whatever that thing is actually occurring, whether that's being late or getting a B in a class or whatever someone perceives to be a failure.
Right.
Building off of the idea of intrinsic motivation, how do you foster curiosity and a love for learning in your child?
So I am one of those parents that I was very active with my kids from a very young age. And my kids are close together in age, and we were always doing things. We were at the science center or at the park or at the children's museum. And if we had play dates, we had like crafts that we were doing to learn about something. So I've always, I think from an early age, tried to just encourage them to be curious about things and to learn things. And I think that translates into, when they do go to school, I think they do. I'm lucky that I have 3 kids that I'm not going to ever say that like, oh, every day they love school, because I don't think anybody feels that way.
Loves school every day.
Yeah. But I think they were at least open to the idea of learning different things, because obviously when you go to school, there are requirements and you have to learn You know,
Yes.
you have to go into different things that you might not necessarily be a fan of. But my kids have kind of embraced that, and for, you know, taken different paths along the way. I also think we were very, very focused on, if you are participating in something and I think we'll talk about this later, but try everything. Like, if there's a musical instrument you want to try it. If there's a sport you want to try it. Like, we always said, like, anything you want to try, we'll support you as best we can. Just keep, you know, if there's you wake up one day and you want to try this sport, by all means, let's get involved somehow. So always just, I think, because I think that's how you learn about yourself.
I agree. Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah. And
Okay.
that idea about sports, like, I played so many sports when I was younger that my parents just wanted me to, like, try different things. And I think, I mean, right now I don't play a sport anymore, but I think all of those experiences really built me in the sense of, like, helping me find who I am and, like, what I actually, like, love to do.
Yeah.
And that's also, I think that same idea kind of translates into, like, the upper levels, like, middle school and high school, because I know, like, when I first stepped foot into the high school, like, I joined so many clubs and extracurriculars. I was in, like, I don't know, 10 plus, 15 plus clubs.
Wow.
And, like, now, like, I'm probably only in, like, I don't know, a couple, like, less than 5 of the original ones I signed up for, because I think you really need to, like, go out of your way to try different things before you can discover what you actually are passionate about.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point.
Okay, my next question is, what role do praise and recognition play in your parenting? How do you balance encouragement without making it feel transactional?
So this ties into some of the other questions. I think, obviously, I think that we're always parents who applaud our kids, you know, tell them great job if they got a good grade on a test or got a grade that they wanted or accomplished something in school. And I think we try to sort of stay away from any kind of monetary reward system or anything, because I think you do have to rely on your internal motivation for things. And again, so just talking back about the rewarding things with external, you know, things, it just wasn't the way that we parented. Yeah. So I think when it says, when you overdo it with kids, they grow to expect that kind of over the top constant validation from the outside world. And as adults, we know that that's not reality.
Yeah.
So, and I even said, I'm not going to say I never, like, told my kids, like, oh, if you do A, B, or C, I'll do whatever.
Yeah.
Because, and I think that there are definitely instances where that's appropriate. Like, if one of my children is afraid of something, like, and we're, you know, approaching whatever that is that they're afraid of, and, you know, you're trying to encourage your kid to get past the fear.
Yeah.
In those instances, I think I've probably, you know, I don't want to use the word bribed, but, like, said, okay, if you can do this, we'll fill in the blank, do whatever. I think there are times where that's appropriate.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think it's more about, it's hard to, because there's a lot of comparison. It's a very competitive environment in some school situations. So, and again, you might get a lot of external validation.
Yeah.
Even when you're in the school setting, but when you get out into the world, that's not going to be there anymore. So again, you're going to have to find out within yourself to get the validation that you need.
Yeah. I think that idea with monetary rewards, like, brings up a good point, because I know when I was younger, and, like, even now, sometimes I hear, like, oh, if I get this amount of A's, or for each A I get X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good idea, because it's, again, coming from a good place. Like, the parents want their kids to succeed and, like, want to give them a motivator, but over time that can be a negative influence on the child's intrinsic motivation. I do have a funny example, though. I know someone who is very, very smart. Like, when I say smart, I mean, like, genius level smart. And if he didn't try like at all, like he probably doesn't even need to take notes, he could get like straight A's. But the way like the high school works is like a 90 to a 100 is all A. But I think his parents want to challenge him, so like they reward him like with money if he gets higher A's. But I think that's kind of a different situation because they want him to challenge himself.
Yeah.
Because like in college, they don't grade the same way that the high school does, because like a 90 is like an A minus,
Right.
whereas like 100 is an A plus. So I think like the monetary rewards can be used to supplement learning, but
Sure.
if it's only coming from like you have to get straight A's or else like no reward or whatever punishment, I think
Right.
can be a detriment
So-
potentially.
In the like same topic of like monetary like prizes of sort. So how would you like feel about something like chores, where some kids are like, okay, if you set the table and do the dishes every day for the week, then you get $10 and that's your allowance. Do you feel like that's a different thing or another like detriment to intrinsic motivation?
I actually think that's probably very positive.
I agree.
If it's done, I think if it's done, I think that's another area where I could have used a lot of improvement. Is just like of course, you introduce chores and then they fall by the wayside. And as hard as I've tried, and I'm guilty, and I know a lot of parents will probably say this, I'm guilty of doing too much at times for my kids. But I do think that there's a lot of value in they learn how to do things, and they're going to need to learn how to do those things for when they're out on their own. So it's important for that. Also, when you're part of a family, you should pitch in, because we're all living in this house. Everybody should be pitching in. And I think also it starts to teach them the value of money.
Yeah.
So if you, and I don't think it's bad to say, if you ask adults now and if you ask somebody like, what's your biggest motivator? A lot of people will say money.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people that are motivated by money.
Yes.
And if that drives you to have a great job that you love and be able to have a home and have 2 cars and go on vacation and do the things that are important to your family, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So again, it's probably back to the supplemental thing. Like, you want them to be driven internally, but the supplemental things are great as long as the internal motivation is there.
I agree. And I feel like it's kind of different. I know, Grace, you were asking whether it's the same or different. I think it's a different circumstance because the reward doesn't necessarily take away from a pre-existing intrinsic motivation, because I don't know how many kids feel the desire to take out the trash and set the table and wash the dishes and fold the laundry or whatever. But like, so giving them like a monetary reward isn't necessarily taking anything away. And then also it's something where when they have to do it on their own, excuse me, later in life, they'll see the consequences firsthand. Like, if they don't do their laundry, they don't wash their dishes, there's going to be no dishes and no laundry.
Right.
So it's like, it's different as in like grades where maybe there's not something or someone holding them accountable.
Right. That's a good point.
Let's take a moment to acknowledge St. Clair Health. We're deeply grateful for their generous sponsorship of the 4th season of Teens Cafe.
At St. Clair Health, we're always improving, building on our commitment to face the challenges of today, making an impact on the communities we serve so we can be stronger together by creating reliable resources that recognize all of our neighbors, with access to the highest quality healthcare, advanced care close to home, and a shared humanity that delivers on our joint vision to create a healthier community for all. St. Clair Health, expert care from people who care.
So moving on to the second half of the content, my question for you, Kelly, is, do you think schools and extracurricular activities focus too much on extrinsic rewards such as grades, trophies, etc.? And if so, how do you counterbalance this at home?
Okay, my immediate answer to that is yes. I think that there is too much focus on the importance of grades and the importance of trophies and winning and all of that stuff. And I think we are living in a time where, everybody gets a trophy. It's not uncommon that if you have like a youth sport, everybody gets a a participation trophy. And I don't know. I think I think that it's hard, and I guess I answer all these questions also with like, I have no judgment of anybody else and how they've chosen to parent. I just think that it just, again, sets you up for getting out into the real world and having to do things at work that nobody's going to applaud for you, and you're not going to get a sticker or, a ribbon because you did your job.
Yeah.
And so I think we've done our best to sort of, I think you have to like, we sort of believe like you have to teach your kids to be humble too. Like they can have all the talent in the world and get the wonderful grades. That's something that, you keep to yourself. And it's all validating for you, but it's not something that we go out of our way to like have a parade because someone got straight A's.
I was actually talking about that with my friends the other night because in high school, I know like everyone, when you get to high school, and especially with like social media and whatnot, like everyone knows everyone's business in a way. And especially this year with like college applications and college decisions and everything, my friends were talking about, my one friend said something. She was like, I think there's so much power in being humble because the different people, like the way they react to their accomplishments or college decisions or whatever, like the way that other people perceive them based on how they act is so different, just based on that factor of like being humble.
Yeah.
And like I think there's so much power in that. Like you do need to know when to advocate for yourself and when to like show off your accomplishments, but there's also like so much like importance and value in being humble, especially in like interpersonal relationships.
Right. And I think even to add on to that, I think the importance of my husband and I always tell our kids, it doesn't feel like it now when you're in high school or middle school where grades are how you're measured against your peers. When you get out into the world, truthfully, if you work hard and you do your best, you're going to get where you want to go, and you will likely surpass people that got better grades than you did.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, when you're out in the working field, your employer doesn't care what your grades were in college or in high school. They care, are you showing up? Are you doing your job? Are you excelling? So we also are very big about telling them, like I remember we had left the pediatrician's office, and I said to my kids, you can see like her diplomas on the wall, the pediatrician. And I said, do you have like, that she graduated from this one college. Do you remember what college it was? And they said no. And I said, do you have any idea what her grades were? And they said no. And she's a pediatrician. She's like, we adore our pediatrician and we trust what she tells us. I have no idea what her grades were. Yeah. She may have gotten not great grades. You don't know that about anybody, but she's great at what she does there. And it's like anything else. There are really smart people that have, if you're talking about doctors in like particularly, there are really smart doctors who probably got straight A's but have no bedside manner, and people won't come back to them. Or you have a person that's a doctor that didn't get the best grades but has all the bedside manner in the world and is sought after. Yeah. So, and I think that goes for every other industry. Yeah. So I think we always emphasize the importance of just doing your best and working hard. And if you outwork somebody else, you're gonna get ahead, not 9 times out of 10.
I think that's an amazing point, especially with like the diplomas thing, because the most is you see it and you see the name and you're like, oh, cool, they went to like school. Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah.
You never know if someone went to the best school and got the worst grades, right? Or maybe the worst school, not that there is a worst school, and got like the best grades. There's no like, as long as you work hard, like they both ended up in the same place.
Yeah. Absolutely.
My next question is, how does social media impact intrinsic motivation? Do you think it has made it harder for kids to develop self-driven goals?
I didn't make any notes for this because even the word social media send me into such a frenzy. I can't even tell you. I Okay, so you're asking me, how does social media impact intrinsic motivation? On the surface of that question is social media, and I'm not negating that there are positives of social media. I know we all get memes that make us laugh, and I see recipes that are amazing and all of these things. And I'm not saying that there aren't positives, but I think for children and teens and adolescents, I think the cons far outweigh the pros for that very reason of it's very much about how many likes am I getting? How many, like, that is all about external motivation. I'm posting something and I only got 2 likes, and my friend posted something and she got 400 likes. And so right away you're already feeling like you're less than. So I am someone who was very vigilant about phone and social media use, and I did the very best I could. There were failures and there were successes, but I don't think. I guess my general opinion about that is I don't think it's good for external or internal motivation. I think it hurts. I mean, I think there have been studies that have proven that for girls in particular, it's very damaging to self-esteem and self-confidence. I wouldn't say that that's not true for boys as well. I think it just maybe isn't reported as much as with girls. But I think that's a really difficult. It's a difficult question. It's a difficult place in our where we are in our society, where the phones and the social media aren't going anywhere, and we're just having to figure out how to best keep our kids safe and healthy and moving forward, and and keeping whatever internal motivations they have without having people outside of them take that away.
I do agree. I think that social media makes it so much more of a comparison game, and like we often see other people's successes as like our own failures, and like, oh, this person is at this place and they look so happy, and like, why am I not that happy? Like, why can't my life be like theirs? But you really never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Right.
Like, maybe they were just smiling for the picture, but they're actually not happy. And like, you never know, like, you really just never know what's going on behind a picture, or like a post or whatever, or in someone's mind. And I think it just like, we kind of lose sight of ourselves when we're always comparing ourselves with other people.
I agree with you, Kate. And I also think, so much of it, and I appreciate where mental health has gone over the past decade. And I think conversations about authenticity and how there's so much surrounding like being your authentic self. And I know programming like Girls on the Run and things that I've been involved in the past really focus on that. And I think that's where the magic is for kids, is to grow and be your authentic self. And that's really hard to do when you're at a party with your friends and you are totally miserable, but the pictures are being taken, you're smiling because it's being posted on Instagram or whatever, and you're so unhappy and forced to be somebody that you're not, with a group of people that maybe don't align with who you are as a person. And I think there's probably a lot to that. I think that question could be talked about for hours, but I agree with you. And I think it's probably more damaging than good, in my opinion.
Okay, my next question is, how do you guide your child when they lose motivation for something that they were once passionate about?
Okay, that's another good question. Okay, so I think there's a couple of different steps here. I think the first questions that I would ask are like, what's going on? Like, if this is something that you've loved, if you've played this sport or played this instrument and you no longer want to do it, is there a reason? Is there something that happened? Is there I don't know, is there maybe a coach that maybe said something that hurt your feelings or whatever? And when they're young, that might be a reason why they're moving away from something. And then beyond that, I think it's just helping them to find something else that they might want to try or fall in love with. I think, and I wrote down a bunch of examples with my own kids, because I think that it's important to maybe talk about why they loved it in the first place, but then as they grow, they're going to change. There are going to be different likes and dislikes and things that they they might want to try. I know my one daughter played probably 8 or 9 instruments. My 2 other kids have played multiple sports. Like, just again, going back to what we talked about earlier, just trying everything. So if this is no longer making you happy, and I think we always had the rule too, like, finish out the season. If you're in a sport, finish the season, and then let's try something else. Or if there's an instrument that you want to try, let's try that, because I think it's normal to sort of fall out of love with certain things that you're doing. I think to normalize that and to say that's okay. It's okay if you don't love that anymore. Did something happen? Like, is there a reason why you don't love it? Did something happen surrounding that activity? And then if there wasn't, if it just wasn't like, I just don't want to do it anymore, then certainly try to help them find something else that they might like to do.
I think it's really important that you said to, like, find out why, because if it's like maybe a bully or like a bad coach or like a bad one experience, you don't want, because like sometimes when you're younger you don't understand that like you can overcome that barrier. But I think helping your kid recognize, like, okay, is it like just because, is it like I actually don't love doing it anymore, or is it that something or someone else is making me not love it anymore? And then that way you can overcome the obstacle and keep doing what you love.
Right. That's a very good point.
My very last question for you is, what do you think the biggest misconception is that parents have about motivation in their kids?
Okay, I'm going to make a blanket statement and then I'll say why I think this. I think this was a hard question, by the way. I think the biggest misconception is that parents are responsible for motivating their children. And I think that when they're little, yes, there are a lot of situations where you have to, as a parent, you have to motivate them to get their shoes on to get out the door, or you're never going to get them to school on time. So there are things along the way. But as they get older, I think you realize that you have to step back and allow the seeds that you've planted in, like, the self-motivation to take over, because you can't sustain that. You can't, even with, like, I know just recently, like, applications for National Honor Society, like, that those motivations have to come from the child. Like, you don't want to be chasing them down the
make sure you submit your application. Make sure you submit your application.
Yes, and again, I will say that I'm not saying that I've never had to say that. And I think my son is probably tired of my voice right now, but I think beyond when they leave your house, they're not going to have your voice anymore. So I think that is, and that's something that I think I've learned a lot about too, even recently. Like, it isn't my job. At some point, it's no longer going to be my job to motivate you. Like, I hope that I've done what I was supposed to do up until now, but now it's I'm handing that over to you. Because I think, and I have talked to, like, college professors, and because my oldest daughter's in college, and they talk so much about how parents are still very much involved, calling, asking about grades. These are adults of adult children in college, and there's still a lot of motivation coming from parents. And I think, and again, no judgment, but that's not my job. That's not our job anymore. So I think that's hard. I think that's and I'm sitting here, listen, I could list 100 mistakes that I've made. So I'm only speaking as like someone who has learned this throughout the years. And like I said, I'm doing probably a better job with certain things with my last child than I did with my first, because I think you do learn as you go along. So, yeah.
I think that's really important. That's a really important point. And I think it's like kind of that idea of like weaning your child off of that motivation, like kind of, and I think that act and that process helps them build their own motivation, like you were saying.
Yeah.
To conclude, we want to express our gratitude to St. Clair Health, whose support makes this podcast possible. We invite you to listen to the following message from our sponsor.
At St. Clair Health, we're always improving, building on our commitment to face the challenges of today, making an impact on the communities we serve, so we can be stronger together. St. Clair Health, expert care from people who care.
I also have a bonus question for you, Kelly,
Okay.
which is, if you could give one piece of advice to other parents about fostering intrinsic motivation, what would it be?
Okay. I think this is probably my favorite question of all, because I think that this relates to intrinsic motivation. I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is learning how to let your children struggle. I think that, and I was guilty of this, trying to come in and rescue. And even, as they've gotten older, as a parent, you don't want to see your kids sad or struggle. And I think there's only one way through any difficult situation, and that's to struggle through it. And I think that's what builds resilience and self-confidence. And so as hard as it is, and intrinsic motivation, I think as hard as it is, you've got to let them struggle through some things sometimes. So yeah, that's, I think, the biggest piece of advice I would give.
Thank you.
And it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So quickly, I'd like to mention some upcoming outreach updates and events. Outreach will be attending Mount Lebanon Earth Day 2025 on Sunday, April 27th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Mount Lebanon Main Park, 900 Cedar Boulevard, 15228. They will also be attending Representative Dan Miller's 12th Annual Disability and Mental Health Summit on Thursday, May 8th, 2025 at Community College of Allegheny County's Allegheny campus on the north side. Outreach also has their annual Connections Gala coming up on Friday, May 2nd at the Heinz History Center. The gala starts at 6:30 p.m. Buy your tickets now. Also, be on the lookout for an OCC spring event. We are in the process of finalizing the details, so information will be provided soon. We are so grateful to each and every one of you for tuning in and supporting our podcast. Thank you so much for being on Teens Tap In today, Kelly. It was a pleasure having you.
You're welcome. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
The views and opinions expressed in the Teens Tap In podcast represent the opinions of the hosts and their guests. The views and opinions expressed by Outreach Teen and Family Services employees, donors, and volunteers are their own and do not necessarily reflect the view of Outreach Teen and Family Services or the show's sponsors. The content here should not be taken as counseling advice. The content here is for informational purposes only, and because each person is unique, please consult your mental health provider or physician for any mental health counseling or other medical questions. The podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including, but not limited to, establishing a standard of care in a legal sense, or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast. If you find any error in any of the content of the podcast, please contact us at podcasts@outreachteen.org. Outreach Teen and Family Services, its sponsors, donors, and partners expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages whatsoever arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, reliance on, or inability to use this podcast or the information presented in this podcast. Please go to www.outreachteen.org to see the complete notice and disclaimer for the podcast episodes.